And while we are doing that, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. See, we have some students in here. You guys are overachievers trying to get your class done early, so that's good. Our meetings are governed by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is located on the back wall. Jody has verified publication and notification of our meeting this evening, so we will begin with our public forum. And first up here, while Robert Pinsky is coming up, I will go ahead and go over the ground rules just so everybody's on the same page. We allow a 5-minute time limit for comments. Please keep your comments free of personnel and other types of staffing issues. And we will not generally respond. This is your chance to provide us feedback. And if there are items we need to follow up on, the administration will do so in a timely manner. So, Robert, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening, all. My request to this board, my call to action is that please vote no on any effort to put a bond issue, coming up on this November elections vote. I do want to start off by thanking the board members and the school officials for all the hard work that goes into what you do. That does not go unnoticed, and I really do thank you. Regardless that we may have differences of opinion, I just wanted to offer up my, my gratitude and my respect for what you do. So at the beginning, I was just going through, and I did happen to, for the superintendent's report, and I'm citing the non-voter survey results and next steps, August 2024. What I find fascinating, and I quote, NS Consulting has continued to survey and send polls to these constituents who do not vote in the 2024 bond election. End quote, but I'm paraphrasing. It's really interesting, I've never been contacted. They go on to say that while it's really difficult to get more than 300 folks, I find that unbelievable. And hey, we just gotta, move forward. I think you need a new consulting agency. This seems like, hey, they're doing a side hustle for you, or probably paying you good money. But I can tell you why folks voted no, or they didn't respond, is they're so tired of increased taxes across the board. So I feel we should stop spending money on this consulting firm, listen to the people. But this report of, well, they didn't vote on the board, they didn't remember, blah, blah, blah. This seems like whitewashing here, just get rid of it. What I again want to urge the board is to vote no on approving another tax on the property owner. For whatever reason, school leadership has not learned from recent history, nor the feedback of the taxpayers. This has been tried and failed twice in the past few years. Time and time again, the community has said no to new taxes without a thoughtful, engaged discussion with the people who will need to pay this bill. Please do not hold the taxpayer, the property owner, hostage to this lack of planning or lack of critical thinking by the office of the superintendent. If the office is not responsible or accountable for this current state, I imagine that the board accepts where we are today and the responsibility to make hard choices and postpone this bond vote until the public knows what they're paying. To simply recycle the $153 million bond price tag, or if it's $120 million now. The thing is, I don't know, and I bet you most people don't know because we haven't had a thoughtful discussion. I was under the impression we would have a long, engaged, maybe 6 to 9 month, hey, here's what we need, let's define the requirements. I don't think anyone honestly believes that we, in a couple months, if you vote in September to put this on the ballot, can we really have a thoughtful discussion of what's in here, or are we just recycling and repeating? That's my concern. We don't know what's in here. I think for most of us are opposed to this. We want good salaries for our teachers. We want good salaries to our support staff. What we don't want is Taj Mahal buildings. We don't want things we cannot afford. So I feel like for all of us here, we've been hijacked a little bit into this process. And I get it, there's things that the board wants, the office of superintendent wants. But I think that we all need to form up and make sure that we properly challenge what's coming forward. In reality, how are we as taxpayers, are we in a position to vote for $120 to $150 million without knowing what we're getting for that? How do we challenge? Can we expect that 3 months or whenever it is put onto the ballot by the time of November, can we actually say there was a thoughtful discussion? I believe a couple of years ago, it was, hey, we're going to include the citizenry, those that are going to be paying these taxes. We've got folks on fixed incomes, we've got retirees, we've got folks without kids that everyone's willing to support, but you got to include them into the discussion. This rush to another rinse, recycle, repeat, it's crushing us. Take a breath, think about what we need to do, involve the community. I said countless times, I'm willing to support, I'm willing to help and lend my time. But again, this agency that's asking, hey, would you like a new school? Yes. Okay, they forgot to say, well, it's going to cost $120, $150 million, and here goes your mortgage. Ooh. They don't caveat that. So all these good numbers that we're going to show later today, that is all sugarcoating on top. We need to get to the substance, and I would ask for the board to demand the Office of Superintendent and staff to bring forward some critical thinking, some solutions in these economic hard times. We know everyone is challenged. So again, I sincerely support everyone. I think I'm running out of, my time is up. So thank you, but please vote, say no to this, to a bond issue this November, but let's come together over the next year as a community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, our next speaker is Carol Dussel-Cerny. Stacy's gonna keep track of time for me.
Mine is just, I actually had time to go through the agenda, so I'm excited. Although I did it last night and I'm looking at my notes going, ooh, do I know what it is? I just have some questions as I went through it, and it could be that all of my questions are going to get answered tonight, but I don't know, so I'm just going to ask. Under the student services section, there was budgeted money for unfilled positions. Does that go to cash reserves, or what happens to that money? It looks like we increased an ELL position to full-time. I'm just curious how many more ELL kids we had. We're working on new teacher appraisals and grading framework. I don't know if there's much discussion on that, but I was just curious what it was. And then there was a comment, curriculum material and delivery are ahead of schedule due to allocated purchasing within the 23-24 budget. All material distribution will be completed before students arrive. I would assume that has occurred, but is the budgeted part the staff time to deliver books, or I just didn't know what it was. Blended boot camp for the professional learning opportunities. Is that teachers can go, or do they get paid extra? Again, just curious. I'm curious on the cost of the extra survey that we did, and how did they target non-voting? Like, how did they find out? Did we make calls? And then they said there was text messages, and I know I checked on some. Is that actually a text message or something the school is doing, or is this like a spam thing? Because I get nervous to respond to some of those things, so I don't want to get into a link that's ugly and disgusting. So I didn't remember that there was going to be more of that, but I don't know if people know, so maybe a lack of response is because they don't know if it's a spam or something that's legitimate for the district. I did like the bond issue to-do list, the district debt, looking at creative and financial sound ways to what we can do with that debt, so I'm anxious to hear about that. And the levy impact, I'm curious on how you have a zero levy impact without pushing principal payments out again, and I think community has said loud and clear that's not what they want. So I guess I'm curious as to how you do that. I said ouch to the extra $150,000 on the modulars. So I don't know what happened there. Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything. I was excited that there might be some at OPS because I assumed that would be cheaper than bringing them halfway across the state or more. On the CLP contract, it says that we will get 80% reimbursed because we're going to outsource part of that. I'm curious as to what if we gotten any reimbursement had we had that position in-house? I don't know how that works, so again, just curious. And then on the survey, I thought it was interesting that, some of the other options in there were our biggest, like, percentage. So it's like, oh, it was option 1, 2, and 3, and the other was like the last one, but in some of them it was almost the biggest. So again, just curious what the other reasons were that people were giving, and it could be in there someplace. It was late when I was looking at it. And so some of the questions were interesting. I thought slide 10 especially, where like people were concerned about being good stewards of the tax dollars. And I think I've seen good things, because obviously everybody knows I come to the meetings. I see things and hear some things, but I don't think a lot of people do. But I think maybe the question that people are looking for is, there was not a lot of satisfaction, let's say a couple of years ago. What are we doing differently, and what have we learned so that we're not repeating history? I think if some of that can be demonstrated, that might help to get the next bond issue approved. And I'm building and finance, super interested in the principal call dates, those kind of options that were being talked about there. And then staffing on transportation, was just kind of curious. Do we, we're increasing our contracted drivers, if I understood that right? Does that mean we have less, I assume, Bennington employees? And I don't know, are we doing anything super unique? Like, do we have like an evening position? Maybe somebody would be willing to do all activities, or what kinds of things, other things that we might be looking at to get that, because obviously the more kids we have, the more activities, we have routes, all those things that need to get kids to school and that, so. And then the cost of a maintenance person, they talked about summer maintenance. I don't know if that 31,000 was just things over the summer, or was that over the whole year, some maintenance? Because if I just took 31,000 and divided by hourly rate, that would only be $15 an hour, and I'm gonna guess we're not gonna get a mechanic for that. At least not one that maybe isn't just fresh out of school or doesn't have lots of experience. So just my questions, and they may all be getting answered tonight, I just didn't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in the public forum section of our meeting this evening? Quite a bunch. We're all thinking about school starting. Okay, that brings us to our consent agenda, which includes approving the agenda, approving the minutes from our July 8th meeting and our hearing on July 17th in retreat. And then also the August bills that were presented for approval and payment in our personnel report. Who had bill review? Christy and Kara. Okay, is there anything of note you want us to know? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, there is a motion suggested.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Kara. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any further discussion? Jody, call the roll.
Steve,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Kara.
Yes. Motion passes. That brings us to our reports and presentations section of our board meeting, and given we have back to school night, we have a little bit lighter reports that are going to be given. So I believe we are starting with our student services report, which is Mr. Bombeck.
Hello, Dave Bowman, Student Services, Director of Student Services. Yeah, it's been a good start to the year so far. It's been nice to touch base with staff and have conversations, kind of get back into the motions of things. But to talk about what we have in the report here, as you'll see when we look at the graph there, the red indicates this year's August start, and blue indicates last year's August start. In most areas, we're looking at a slight increase in students from August to August. Keep in mind that these are very kind of raw numbers. They're not like our official October count numbers. So it's what we have in the system as of the 1st of August. We see a couple areas where we're dipping in with preschool and Stratford. We're looking at those being just the nuance of the preschool. We were heavy last year. We're a little lighter this year as we get started, but we anticipate those will fill in pretty quickly as the year goes on. Stratford just didn't have quite as many students moving on, had a few more students moving on, didn't refill with quite as many kindergartners as we have that preschool kind of filling in a lot of our kindergarten classes as we move forward. A couple of things I'll highlight down here just to kind of talk about some of the questions that were asked earlier. The EL position, we were filling the position that was open, that was 0.6 position that was open. The remainder of that position was actually shifted towards the middle school language position. So not all of that, that wasn't truly a move from a 0.6 to a 1.0, that was a 0.6 ELL being filled with 0.6 ELL being filled. That being said, we are starting to see our numbers in EL increase just in the nature of our district, so we'll see how that progresses over the next few years. For the filled FTE positions with the special education, as we entered last year when I entered the position, we had, I believe, three open positions that were not filled the previous year as we wanted to have them filled. At Christmas last year, we filled that position at Pine Creek Elementary with a new graduate student that did some student teaching with us. As we moved into 24-25 school year, we had those open positions sitting there ready to be filled. We were able to hire those early, and so we were able to fill those positions and be fully staffed as we move into the year. So we're excited about having that, because I think that'll be a relief for some of our case managers and how they are able to work with students and create those relationships. Yeah, any questions? All right.
Thank you, Dan. That brings us to our operations report. Dr. Bloomfield?
Evening, how are you guys tonight? Good. Okay, just a few things I'll highlight here. Picture in the middle, Stacy, can slide down there. I'd like to thank Mrs. Panning, Dr. Tyndall, Mr. Feeney, Mr. Uffman, Mrs. White. We were able to welcome 44 new teachers to Bennington Public Schools this last Wednesday and Thursday for our new teacher mentor mentee induction. They had 2 days of training, had an opportunity to meet with their mentors on Thursday afternoon. Throughout the course of the school year, they'll continue to have some training that we provide. We give them some choice sessions that they get to pick and choose from on what they think would be pertinent to their development in their classroom. About a quarter of those new teachers were right out of college newbies, and 3/4 have anywhere from 2 to about 25 years of experience. So we feel like we had a really good group. As always, we will survey them at the end of the school year, get feedback on what they think went well throughout the program and what they think could help maybe next year's cohort. Over the course of 13 or 14 years, we've always found something we can try to improve upon. If you remember, this year would be the first year that we have assigned mentors in each building that are specifically trained. We had some of that training take place this last June to get them prepared for their new mentees that came in this year. So it's been an exciting start to the year, and we're ready to get them going. They're anxious to come in this week. One other just quick note, HR-wise, if you go down to the last paragraph when we look at staffing, if you can scroll up, Stacy, sorry, a little bit more. There we go, right there. Under substitute teachers, starting the year with 171 substitute teachers, had the opportunity to hire 4 more today. So we're up to 175. So we're up from where we were a year ago. Just thought that might be some information that you'd appreciate. And then when we look at staffing, the second paragraph there, classified staff, 84.3% filled again this year, which is a little down from last year at 86.5. 14 days ago, we had 12 para positions in the district that we needed to fill. We have hired 11 paras since that time, and we still have 11 para positions to fill, meaning we just had some people that have resigned, and it takes time to fill those spots. And so we're in the ballpark of where we want to be. I think we had a bus driver that we hired today, so we're excited about that. Last year, if you remember, in late February, we had about a 2-week time frame where all of our paras were filled in the district. All that time, I think we had about 68 paras. It lasted about 2 weeks. It's just a place where we have a lot of turnover. So appreciate Mrs. Sindler really working hard to try to fill those positions, and we'll continue to work this week to do what we can to get those filled. Questions about operations I can answer?
You answered my question about percentage of newbies.
All right, thank you.
One quick item to note on there is, we're 99% filled with certified teaching staff. Last year, it was 6.5 or 7.5, I can't remember, positions that we were unable to fill to start the year. So not only were we able to have some growth this year, but able to backfill those positions, some of them being special education that Mr. Baumbeck talked about. So really good spot.
The early opportunity really helped. Going to the job fair in Kearney the 5th of September, that's the earliest we've ever gone, but that's the world we're in right now, is the earlier that we can go after people, the better opportunity we have to fill those positions with quality education. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Tyndall, our curriculum instruction and assessment.
Good evening, Shannon Tindall, Director of Elementary Education. I'll be giving the curriculum, instruction, and assessment report this evening on behalf of Mr. Feeney and myself. Like everybody's mentioned, the year's off to a great start. I'm going to highlight some items that we did in preparation for the start of the school year and some things coming up at the beginning and throughout the school year. First off, again this year, we will give the NCS growth assessment to grades 3 through 8 and the MAP growth assessment to grades K through 2. Happens 3 times a year, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And what we measure is the students' understanding, to better understand where the kids are in the continuum of learning. We are required to do this as an assessment for students in K through 3 at the beginning of the year. For kindergarten students in the first 45 days of the year, and for first and second in the first 30 days. And so we will open that window August 19th, right at the beginning of the year, and complete it on September 27th. Curriculum and instruction. Our teachers worked hard this summer. 79 TIP grants were applied for and approved for summer work. That means 390 staff members participated in curriculum development and school improvement initiatives this summer for a total of 3,084 hours. That just shows the commitment of our staff for continuous improvement and trying to make the best learning environment possible. Something else I want to highlight is that was mentioned in opening comments is we will continue our work with our teacher appraisal system. What that is we develop rubrics to measure teacher effectiveness and observe and give them feedback for improvement. We just make sure that that is still meeting our needs and our goals and improving instruction and opportunities for our students in that classroom. And then the grading framework is the framework that teachers follow for grading procedures and consistency in classroom grading practices. We have multiple adoptions this year. As you can see, we'll have K-12 social studies, norm reference testing, which is in SCAS, we'll look at MAP and ACT. Some of those are required by the state, but we will look at our interim assessments and to make sure they're still giving us the data we need, and that helps improve our learning practices. And then we have SDS in 9 through 12, K-5 music, and 6-8 tech and living. So we have a large bit of curriculum to look at this year. Finally, some of the blended ed boot camp and summer opportunities for our teachers to develop. That was offered the last week in July. Those are choice sessions. Teachers do not have to attend and do receive a stipend, but you can see 287 staff members. They could have attended multiple, that's total number, took opportunities to learn during their summer months. So that's a great turnout. That's all I want to highlight tonight. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to our superintendent report.
Yeah, longest one in a bit, so everybody get comfortable. First item up is our non-voter survey results and kind of discussing next steps. And so kind of a reminder of where we've been and how we got to where we're at. NS Consulting did a survey of all of our patrons asking various questions about the 2024 bond and why folks voted for it, against it, what were all the reasons for that. As we gave that survey, only about 5% of the results came from folks that did not vote on the 2024. So 95% of it was people that did vote, 5% of those that did not vote. And so we talked about, that's about 2,500, we had about 6,200 folks that voted on the bond issue. We've got about 11,500 that are registered voters within our school district. And so I think generally about 75% is the highest voting turnout that's ever been there. So you're really talking about 2,500-ish people that would be targeted. And so NS Consulting went towards the 2,500-ish people, 2,500-ish people that did not vote in 2024 that had voted in prior elections, sent them text messages to see if we could target them specifically and then get them to respond so we can see more from, or hear more from our community and continue to make good decisions moving forward. With that, 3 rounds of text messages went out, about 100 of those came back. And so, we've got about 100 or so that were put into this survey. And it's some interesting results. A lot of them mirrored what those that did vote in the original survey said, as those that did not vote as well. And so why did they not vote? About 40% because they said they didn't remember or they lost their ballot. And so I think that's probably what we would have expected. I thought it was interesting, we had about 13.5% that said I wasn't swayed either way. I couldn't figure out how I wanted to vote, so I just didn't vote, basically. When we asked them what they liked, the other was the highest category, which means that it wasn't necessarily 30% of one thing, it was 30% of things that we didn't list, and so it was a big amalgamation of items. The highest with a single barometer on there was the benefit to the community, which is also the highest of why people that did vote as well. And so as you're looking at the report, in the parentheses on the right-hand side is those that the previous one, and so you can kind of compare what that looks like. What was disliked on the survey, the top 2 were the same as the other one, impact on the district debt, and then the tax levy increase. And so those were the same as those that did vote as well, a little bit lower in higher percentages. How could it have been improved? Reducing the levy impact, and then improved communication to stakeholders, which we heard on the other one as well. And so that was the top 2 that we need to continue to look at. Again, did you support the construction of a second high school to accommodate growth? Overwhelmingly, they either strongly or somewhat support at about 2/3 of the folks that responded. That's down just slightly from the 71% that we saw in the previous one. When asked if they would vote for or against based on different levy impacts, this one was about 11 to 13%. I'm just going to focus on the 4 category. Would you vote yes in this scenario? And it was about 11 to 13% below the previous one. Almost all of them were 11 to 13%. So it was kind of rhythmic in what was responded. That at 5 cents, 45% were said they were for. At 3 cents, 52%, or 52%. At 1 cent, it was 64, and at no levy increase was 71. Again, this is 100 folks, and so the margin of error is probably somewhere around 15%. It's not, overly tight or accurate, and so you got to take a little bit of it with a grain of salt. And so that leads us to where we're at now. We've tried through 3 rounds of text messages. Do we want to put more money into continuing to try to find additional results? Or we feel like between the 2 surveys, we've got enough to at least start putting together a game plan for communication moving forward or figuring out what our next steps would look like. NS Consulting does believe it's going to be hard for us to get a whole bunch of responses, and their rationale for that is, we're targeting about 2,500 people that did not vote when the ballot came to them within their house. Many have been one single issue voters. It's not necessarily a passion point or something that they're not voting on it. And so there's a reason for that. And so when we target them, they generally, as a collective whole, if they cared a lot, they would have voted, they would have taken the survey. At this moment, they have not decided to take the survey or vote on the issue. And so that's, it's a little bit harder to get them to take those surveys. Probably our next option, if we wanted to continue trying to get those that did not vote to take the survey, would be more mailings, not necessarily text messages or phone calls, because those are fairly exhaustive at this point. And so we try to discuss what our next steps are when it comes to those surveys. What we can see from the 2 surveys as we put them together is we've kind of seen 3 themes that have come out of it. First one was levy impact. Both surveys said the same thing. The levy impact is too high, get the levy impact down. And so that's something that we have to continue to work towards. The second one is district debt. We've heard that on both surveys as well, concerned about the amount of debt that the district has and how that can be managed. And the third one was communication, ensuring that we have good communication so everybody knows what they're voting on when the bond rolls around. And so if the district wants to move forward with another bond proposal during the November election, the board would need to approve that resolution by early September. Based on the community feedback from those surveys, my recommendation would be that we prioritize methodically addressing these biggest areas of need instead of trying to, hurry and rush something through. We have received 3 very clear bouts of information from our community. And so now let's figure out how we're gonna address those three things, and those three things being the district debt. The district debt's an interesting one because it just can't be solved overnight. If we had $165 million laying here, we could just solve the district debt overnight, but we don't. And so while we can't do that overnight, what can we do? What pieces can we put together to try to help our district debt situation in the short term and the long term? The second one, the levy impact. And so, as we said earlier, the community supports the need for the second high school. At least through all the surveys that have ever been done, between 67 and 72% say they support that. They didn't necessarily support the plans that were put forward. With that, in the same category is minimal levy impact. 72 to 82% said minimal levy impact. And so we've got to work towards solutions and explore all our options that can help on that front. And then that third one, communication. Obviously, we need to get back to the drawing board and create a comprehensive communication plan of how to ensure that all 11,500 of our voters within the school community know exactly whether they're saying for or against, they know what they're voting on. And so getting back to the drawing board and figuring out how to do that. People are receiving their information in a variety of ways. Some people come to meetings, some people want on social media, some want the mail to go out to them, some want a phone call, some want someone to go to the door. And obviously we try to accommodate as best as we can, but we probably need a full-on comprehensive plan, how we're going to hit everybody in every category, regardless of how they get that information. So another factor to consider is make a decision about whether to move forward or not is the special session. As a general rule, you will rarely hear me say anything about we should not make a decision because the legislature might do something. If that was the case, we would never make a decision because there's always something they might do. And so all you can do is just make the most informed decision based on the information that you have. But I would say this is a little bit different. We have not ever had a special session to address property taxes. This is a different environment today with a special session than a normal legislative year. And so I think in some ways we've got to be a little patient to see what comes of that as well, because the distribution, whatever the legislature comes up with, the distribution back to schools may change dramatically. And so until that special session ends and we have an idea of what that could look like, it might not be great for us to make decisions and then turn around a month later and the whole, all of our cards have changed. So that's kind of where we're at on that topic. Any questions there? Okay. Next item down there was modulars. Omaha Public Schools is decommissioning some modulars. They passed a bond in 2018, and part of that was to try to get rid of the modulars that they had throughout their, they have tons of schools, of course. And so they have roughly 100 modulars in the next few years that they'll be decommissioning and not necessarily using anymore because they have the facilities to house their students. And so Dr. Blumenkamp and Mr. Edens went out and they toured a couple of the portables that they were getting rid of during this summer. And just to see what was available, I did include some of those pictures that came with that as well. One thing that we are learning, and we have been learning a lot when it comes to modulars, and I said this 6 months ago, knew almost nothing about them, but as we talked to OPS and some others, the cost associated with, in our mind, we're like, okay, we know that we might have to do some electrical and we'll have to get the internet out there and all that type of stuff, but there's even more regulations that go into it. The transportation is super expensive. Shutting down the roads, getting the oversized vehicle, all that stuff. The footings that are required to be put in are more expensive than we anticipated. It's not putting it on the grass and strapping it down. They require certain footings to go with it. And then, of course, just the utilities and those things that we knew. And so, again, this is a range, and we haven't got far enough to where I can say, yeah, this is exactly what it would be, but close to $100,000 to $150,000 just to get one placed, and that doesn't include the cost of the actual modular. And so if you rewind back to where we talked about before, we were worried about the cost of a decent used modular. That could range anywhere from 40, if it's used, probably $40,000 to $100,000. If it's new, it's going to be a couple $100,000. Now also $100,000 to $150,000 just to get them hooked up and ready to roll. And so our costs associated with those are keep increasing, unfortunately. So not necessarily moving forward or looking for a recommendation, move forward anything on the modulars, just want to update you on where we're at. We're continuing to look at them and figure out what the next steps are.
Yeah, I got a question. I mean, if that's gonna be 150,000 and we've got to put in the foundation anyway, we could do a stick note for that.
I mean, those might be things that we have to start looking into just to see if there's ways to do it cheaper.
For sure.
And, obviously, we're working off information that we're receiving from other school districts that have been in the modular game, longer than we have. So bear with us a little bit on exact specifics, but yeah, we get a little options. Anything else on that?
And those modulars are from 2018, is that the year, or were they
Oh, no,
purchased
yeah, they're way
before
before
that?
that. Yeah, they've had them a long time.
Do they
Because of the
not?
2018 bond, they are now not using them, but I
They
think
look
they're,
like they're a lot older.
1960s.
yeah, they're pretty dated. I think we did a good deal on them though, so.
Of course, they want them gone.
Right.
Any other questions on those? Okay, thank you. Next up, an SLP contract. As we started analyzing our speech and language caseload for the 24-25 school year, as it got a little bit closer, we realized it became quickly apparent that we did not have enough staff members to get ourselves through this school year. Last year, we were probably a little bit light. And then we did not add during the curriculum personnel proposal process. As they started putting together caseloads, they realized we're not going to be able to keep up with what we have. And so with that, we intend to contract with a joint contract, 2 different companies to create 1 full-time position. And so Just for Kids and Soliant, I don't know if I'm saying that right, will be in 5 days a week to provide face-to-face services. One will be 3 days, one will be 2 days to create one full-time position. That'll be at the ending rate of service or less, and so it'll be less than that per hour with a total cost not to exceed $115,000. That will be reimbursed, so we'd spend it in 24-25, it will be reimbursed at 80% in 25-26. The contracted rate, to a question that we had earlier, that reimbursement, whether it was our person or a contract, we would get that 80%. The thing that we would run into is it's July, August, and we're not going to find a person to do it. We still have time to hire anybody. Nobody available for some of the contracted services could fill that for us for a year while we figure out what we want to do for 25-26. Last one, just quickly roll through, is our alley cap. So alley cap is our property casualty workers' comp insurance. We received our modifier this year. A reminder what the modifier is based on our usage, based on the professional development that we provide to staff, based on our history, they determine what our premium rate is going to be. A 1.0 means that as they roll out the premium rate, we pay 100% of it. If you had a bunch of issues or you weren't training your staff very much, your rate could be on 1.05, which means you're paying 5% more than you should have paid. If your things are going well, it would go below it. And we are 0.79, so we're only paying 79% of what our premium could be because of the great things that happen within our school districts. So we get that 21% discount. With that, this is how many every years in a row because Bennington's had such a great modifier. We won the Safe School. We were a Safe Schools Award winner. We were one of 3 districts in the state of Nebraska. With this year's rate, we got a 5% savings, so about $7,500 off of our premium in addition to the 21% discount. So all the safety training that we're doing and just having good years on that front is paying off for our district and our taxpayers. One thing I think just for us to kind of keep an eye on is I'm hearing of some districts around the metro and in the area that their property casualty insurance went up 30 to 40% this year. Ours went up 8.4, and theirs are going up 30 to 40%. And so whether that eventually shows up to us or whether we're just not in that situation, I don't really know, but I'm going to kind of keep an ear to the ground of why that could be happening. If it's just how the rates are playing out, and next year all of a sudden we're going to have a 25-30%. I'm just not really certain at this time, but I'm going to keep listening and trying to figure out why that's taking place. Probably not going to go over the rest of the report, but just a reminder to look at that budget approval process. We're at that moment where August 20th to September 30th is a pretty heavy time of year, and so lots of meetings and upcoming items on there as well.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, next up is our committee reports. I know the Building and Finance Committee met, and I looked over the minutes, and I believe all of those items will be discussed later in the meeting, so in the interest of time, if everyone's okay with that, we'll just address those as the agenda items. Okay, that brings us to our coordinator reports, which is transportation and Mr. Edens.
Good evening, Jeremy Edens, Coordinator of Transportation. My August report. So for staffing, we had 85% driver retention year over year. A couple of those are out of our control. We had 2 drivers retired on us, but we did hire 2 new drivers that are starting with us on the first day of school who are fully licensed. And we hired a brand new driver that will start training very soon, the background checks. So right now we have 5 contracted drivers with first student. As soon as our new driver that we just hired completes training, we will cut that number down to 4. So one of the biggest issues is going to be our competition in wages. Neighboring school districts right now have wages anywhere from $15.91 an hour to $43.25 per hour. OPS is a new contractor right now, is hiring blitz. They're offering wages of $25 to $28, $29 per hour. So just looking on Indeed, there's 200 plus jobs in a 15-mile radius of Bennington for CDL drivers. So competition is steep. On the ridership, so as of August 6th, when I wrote this, we had 872 riders registered. As of right now, we have 901. I was forecasting to be over 1,000, so I still think there's about 100 kids out there that will sign up. So far, our average participation rate over the years has been about 21%. So it's pretty easy for us to forecast into the future. It's been pretty solid at 21% the last 5 years. For routing, so growth is a big thing. Sped registrations actually went down from last year. So we had 62 right now in the system. Last year at peak, we had 71 special education riders. Not enough to eliminate a special education route, unfortunately, but nonetheless, we do have an increase of 1 regular route. That's pretty standard for our growth over the years. We typically grow by 1 route. Focusing on reducing the number of stops per neighborhood, trying to streamline as much as we can. We're providing coverage in about 100 square miles of country roads, rural roads, also neighborhoods. So construction and detours are playing a big role in our routing this year, making things a lot longer than they normally are. Just by the numbers, we do 1,300 miles a day in school bus driving. That averages up to about 22 miles per route is the average for our routes. Our longest one right now, regular KT-12, is 36 miles, and that covers our friends up north. Activity trips are going to continue to coordinate between those schools and the high school. We're going to have to be flexible and creative. This is just a sample day. On the sample day, we have a request for 3 vans, but also 6 activity buses that all want to leave and be gone at the same time that I need all my route buses. So there'll be some students that'll be going a little bit earlier. Some coaches will have to leave a little bit later, but nonetheless, we have great coaches, great administration. They're usually very easy to work with and they're understanding. So we did add a second Suburban last year, and we added a Ford Transit, so that certainly helped with our small vehicle usage. In summary, we're feeling pretty strong about routing and coverage for the school year. Recruiting and retention, again, is always going to be our #1 priority. Working to reduce the contracted drivers. Maintaining our growing fleet is becoming more difficult. We will potentially submit a personnel requisition again this year for a full-time mechanic. Over the summer, we spent $31,517 in inspections, parts, and repairs for our transportation vehicles. Future planning recommendations, some solutions for our staffing issues. We consideration of staggering our start times by 45 to 60 minutes. This would essentially make one driver be able to cover 2 routes. So they would run out, pick up their middle school, high school route, come back, pick up their elementary kids. We would need a little bit of adjustment on our start and stop times of the day. But split routes could also help us because then our drivers might be able to go from a 2-hour minimum to a 3-hour minimum and potentially offer benefits there as well. That would definitely help with recruiting and retention. Some potentials for solutions to activity issues, exploring having contests on Wednesdays, very heavy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Fridays are pretty easy to cover for us, weekends are pretty easy to cover, but Tuesdays and Thursdays seem to be our pain point right now. We talked about that, and that's all I have. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
All right, that brings us to our spotlight report on summer school. Ms. Delwo and, is it Mr. Rolo's coming? Both of you? Okay. Free, okay.
If Allison wants to go to high school.
And middle school.
Okay, here we go. Alright, I am presenting for, on behalf of myself and Mr. Minor from elementary summer school. We have 2 sites this year at Heritage Elementary. You're gonna have to flip because I do not have an ever. No one. Got it. All right, go for the gold is our theme. We coordinated with the Olympics. We went for 3 weeks of 5 days this year, which was different than we've done in the past. In the past, we've done 4 weeks of 4 days. And so we had a lot of staff that enjoyed that. Students, we had good attendance. I'll show you that later. Both of the sites offered to all of the students that had IRIPs, and then we listened to teacher recommendations for families that would benefit from summer school. Heritage had 90 students that registered, and Pine Creek had 150. For both reading and math, we support the content that's taught by the classroom teachers. So we pulled the teachers in curriculum meetings to talk about the skills that they thought were most important, and we tried to tie them to assessments that students were already doing at the end of the year so that they weren't assessed at the end of the year, assessed at the beginning of middle school, and assessed at the end of middle school. We did have support in place too. In addition to classroom teachers, we had reading and math intervention, we had student services, we had EL, and then we had a really great turnout of paras and high school volunteers. This just highlights the attendance at each site compared to last year. You can see that our attendance was high in the 90% for most grade levels each day. To support that attendance, the Bennington Schools Foundation has supported the Scholastic Book Fair. So for each week that the students came each of the days, they got 2 free books. It's a buy one, get one free book fair. And that really has been a positive incentive that the foundation has committed to, and it's helped us with attendance. Like I said, we use a referral form filled out by student classroom teachers to determine who will be invited to summer school. If a student's on an individual reading improvement plan, they automatically get invited. That doesn't mean that the parents always accept the invitation. We also look at their math and NSCAS data and their classroom assessments. Once we use this data, then Andrew and I send out invitations to parents, and we look at available staffing compared to the students that were recommended to come, trying to keep our ratio at about 1 teacher to 10 students. Here is the assessment data overall. One thing, like I said, we tried to use the reading assessments that were already done at the end of the school year. It's a way that I think that we would grow in the future is to try to really pinpoint what skills. Trying to use the assessments that the students already had didn't necessarily line up exactly to what they were teaching in the summer school classrooms. And so that's something that I think we have room to grow. One plan that we have to do for that is to use IXL, which is a computer program that the teachers are getting invested in at the end of last year and trained in again this year. So teachers could make mixed review tests that would have reading and math skills covered, and it would really align to what they're learning in the classroom so that we could really pinpoint the skills that they need to use to grow in over the summer. But we did send out a parent survey. So out of the families that were invited, about 80 families responded to the parent survey, which is about 35% response, which we think then makes our results pretty great. About 90% of parents who responded agreed or strongly agreed that their students made progress. That same amount responded that the dates and time worked well for them, and a high percentage said that summer school is an overall great opportunity for their child, and we agree with them. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
So now for the middle school.
Hi, I'm Larissa Horvath. I am a sixth grade math teacher at Bennington Middle School. I was the director of the summer school program this year. Just a quick agenda, what we're going over, so every teacher I'm used to giving you this.
Make sure you do the arrows.
Okay, so the theme, we were supposed to go back to space this year and they changed it to next year, so we came up with a back to moon theme. With that, our students were engaged in a variety of space-themed activities. We also, in the top left, you can see we have a traveling planetarium to the ESU come, just as another incentive to keep coming. They explored things such as technological advancements, like all these kids want to know air shoes, so they learned that was brought by space. We also explored just what we're doing over the next few years and how we're going to make a difference in space and reading, writing, and English. Showcase, we, at the very last day, this is a new thing, we put on a showcase. I invited parents and members of the community. I plan on inviting a lot more people next year. I had no idea how it was going to go. And we had a really good turnout. Kids were able to share what they were doing. You can see in the middle picture, they made space-themed food trucks that involved English and then involved math. At the end of that, they celebrated with Common Ice. Here's our attendance. 16 students had perfect attendance, which is amazing for middle school because we did have a lot of students that struggle with attendance come in. So you can see the attendance rates there, and 10 out of 10, all of my 7th graders, 10 out of 10 students attended. Here is my team, my crew, my Back to the Moon crew. Content areas, reading, writing, and math. We used a co-teaching model. We had 2 certified staff in every classroom. There was a practicum counselor for the entire 3 weeks. 140 students were invited, 47 signed up, and 39 attended. Out of 6th grade, we had 21 students, 2 dropped after 4 days just because of vacations. 7th grade, 10 students, 0 dropped. 8th grade, 8 students, and 1 dropped after 7 days. Approximately 26% of these students had an IEP. So with our curriculum, we focused on NSCAS scores to determine instruction and concepts that needed to be taught via pre-test and post-test. For math, we focused on integers, exponents, order of operations, 1-step equations for 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade did that, 2-step equations, a little more rigor. Combining like terms, distributive property, and then fractions and decimals. Reading, they focused on main idea and details, theme, text features. In English, parts of speech, using punctuation, and figurative language. And here's the data for math. You can see 100% of students in 6th grade, 7th grade grew. 8th grade, there's 1 student that did not grow just because attendance was kind of rocky for that first period in class. And here's the reading. We had great growth on that as well. So 6th grade, 61%, 7th grade grew 90%, and 100% of students in 8th grade should grow. And same with English. And that's the one where they had the food trucks, and kids really like that hands-on building and learning about it. So some further considerations. I know every year, from what I've looked at, transportation has been the biggest barrier. Another one is parents would like to be invited at conferences in the spring. So we would have to do some work at planning and deciding who to invite early. Right now, our district, I feel like, is not ready for a co-teaching model, and that's what we did because that's what's always been done, is what I was told. There needs to be some further training on co-teaching and what that looks like prior to using that again, because right now we could have had a lot more learning going on with 2 separate classrooms. That full-time counselor was amazing, building relationships with students and staff along with myself. Some parents really wanted to add more days, especially with football camp for the high school intruding a bit. And that is all. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Cody Bowles, Assistant Principal, Bennington High School. As you can see, this year we moved up a little bit. We have the PowerPoint created. So we figured since elementary and middle school are doing that, we better try to do that as well. And a big shout out to Mrs. McGrew and Mrs. Holt, both teachers this year to help put this together. They did a great job. So just general information regarding our summer school program. Obviously, our big goal is that we get students back on track for graduation for those who are behind. So the main part of our program is to make sure that we're getting students credits that they need to recoup. And so if students were in for the majority of courses outside of Algebra and English 9, they completed courses through Apex. So that was a new system for us this past year. If overall we were a little concerned about how it may look in summer school, but we provided students the opportunity to do some pre-testing, so that way if they demonstrated knowledge on the pre-test, it didn't make them have to go through those lessons in units. And so I think that certainly saves some students some time and the ability to have some success. Algebra, as it's been for several years, was in person. English 9, this was the first year we had English 9 offered in the classroom, and Mrs. McGrew really took that on as she developed the curriculum there. As I mentioned, as far as course layout, we had 2 3-hour sessions. We ran in June 3rd to the 21st. One change we made from last year, because our Friday attendance wasn't great, is we kind of made Fridays optional. And so students were essentially required Monday through Thursday. If the teacher felt the student was off track, not on pace, they requested those students to come in. We had a lot of success with that. I also think it provided a carrot for some students to really try to make some headway Monday through Thursday. Really all the students that we requested to come in on Fridays came in, so I think that's a practice that we will continue. I mentioned the credit recovery in Algebra English 9 as far as the numbers that are there, and it just gives you some basic grade determination there as well. This is credits earned by grade level. Pretty encouraging when you look particularly at our freshmen and sophomores. It came in every single student that attended earned at least 1 credit. So making headway there, and much of those were your English 9s, your physical science courses. And this just gives you what was earned by department. Overall, English led the way. As far as overall achievement, this gives you the last 3 years, kind of looking at a snapshot of where we're at. We had 35 students that earned at least 1. We had 12 students that earned at least 2 credits this summer. We had 51 total credits that were earned, which is the same as last year, but with 9 fewer students. So that's really encouraging, and you see our numbers are down a little bit there. We also added in there that, I know it's on another slide, but our student achievement through the school year, as you can see on that image there, has been on the uptick. Going from 22-23 first semester, 84%. Last year, we were at 92.4% with students passing all their courses. So that certainly decreases the number of students you need in summer school. As far as attendance, we count by minutes in the classroom. And so unless they just absolutely didn't show up, they're typically not penalized. We really overall had a good attendance rate. We had only 1 student that was dropped due to poor attendance. Our overall rate was 94%. So that's pretty outstanding. Mentioned already that the summer school numbers are lower than they have in the last couple of years. That's mainly due to our increased percentage of our students that are passing classes. And I thought one of the things that was good this year was our counselors met with students during registration for the fall 2024 semester. And then we got some information out there earlier and just made sure we had a pretty good number as we were starting to hand out other registration forms in the spring. As far as summer school, we mainly have it for students that are enrolled at Bennington High School. Typically, as far as registrations and things there, we accept those really up to the day out. We actually had a student that started halfway through our program this year, and he was able to complete a full semester of algebra, so that was really encouraging. But if we have the opportunity, we have the space, we want to give those students an opportunity to get in there. And our teachers did a fantastic job of really communicating with parents, getting information out there about student progress, and just keeping up with them to make sure they know what's going on. As far as summer school staff, and listen, our staff there really did a fantastic job with our students. As you know, some of those summer school students may not be the most motivated students, and so they did a great job. We talked about building relationships, staying patient with them, being encouraging, and they did an outstanding job of that throughout the summer school session. We had a number of students on IEPs. Big thing there with the additional staff, we made sure that all their accommodations were met. They had all the information at their disposal to make sure that, as it says, whatever it was behavior, math calculations, we were providing those needs to those students. So if there are any students that are still credit deficient, we offer a couple different options for those students. Obviously, the student can go back in the classroom and retake the course. If it's a student that still needs to retake a biology, physical science, they can go back and retake it in person. We will continue to offer our credit recovery program this year, which we have typically done Tuesdays and Thursdays for 2-hour sessions. Saturday mornings are there as well for Saturday school. And we do offer credit recovery during the school day. We are going to cut down the periods this year. I think right now we're offering 3 periods during the day versus I think we had 7 last year. And that was mainly for the sake of making sure that we can manage it maybe a little bit better than what we were last year. And then the last part just talks about what we're looking at as far as credit deficient students as we head into the school year. The other day during one of our staff meetings, we showed our staff our overall credits for each of our returning grades, and we're eclipsing 94% plus of those students that are on track to graduate, which is really outstanding. So we see a lot of green, which is good. Questions?
All right, that brings us to our lobbyist report. I think that's Dr. Blaska.
Yeah, so Julia Fletcher was not able to be here today, and I was like, hey, it's all good. I got this. And then I started thinking, I get the opportunity to try to summarize the special session, which has been interesting to say the least. And so I'll do my best. At the beginning of the month, at the end of July, a special session was called to attempt to reduce the property tax situation within the state of Nebraska. With that, over 100 bills were submitted by different senators in there. That is pretty abnormal. Typical special sessions have 15 to 20. This one had 100. And so after that went in, had to do all the hearings on all 100 bills. And so got that done over the course of a week or so. Ultimately, the governor's initial proposal was LB 1, 2, and 3. So each of those were on together. And they were working through those, had a bunch of about 9 hours of opposition testimony during the hearing. Ultimately, we're getting ready to go forward, and then decided, okay, they don't have 33 votes. As a reminder, you have to have 33 votes to get past a filibuster. And so that's kind of like the magic number. And so as they were working through LB 1, 2, and 3, realized there wasn't going to be 33. Let's take this off the shelf. Let's start compromising. Let's look at the next one. And so about a week ago or so, came back with AM 51, which was attached to LB 9, Senator Hughes's bill. That came forward and was on the floor a day or a half of a day, and realized there's not 33 votes. Can we just adjourn for a while? And so they adjourned for about 3 days, and came back today. And so during the interim there, they worked on a new proposal, and that came out about 1 o'clock today. And so bear with me, I know enough to be dangerous, but it's AM 73, which is now attached to LB 34. And so the latest one, as of whatever, 5-6 hours ago, essentially to take the levy from a dollar cap from $1.05 as it is currently down to 40 cents in 25-26, 35 cents the year after, and then 30 cents every year from that point forward. With that, the special building fund, which is currently capped at 14 cents, would go to 10 cents, which doesn't impact us because we don't levy into it very much. And then the LER would be 2.5 cents, whatever the max rate is. And so I had about an hour this afternoon just to kind of start dissecting and figure out what this looks like. And each of these iterations, from the first one, the second one, to now the third one, it comes out, it's 120 pages, digest it, start putting on paper what this could look like over the next few years. Schools do it, businesses do it, all the different industries are working through what this would look like, and then hopefully provide feedback to our senators on how that could impact us. As of this moment, on the new one that came out, I have no idea if it's going to be well received or not well received. I do know that as a school district, obviously, we realize that education is over reliant on property taxes, and we absolutely want to be a part of the solution. We also want to make sure that we can provide the high quality education that our communities come to expect. And so as we work our way through what this could look like for many public schools over the next several years, we'll continue to be a part of, or at the table, I should say, with our senators, making sure that they know that what they're voting on and how it can impact us. But I always kind of tell people, like, there's nobody that wants property tax relief more than us. I mean, we realize the over reliance we have on it, that's the system that's in place. And so anything we can do to make that better, make it better for our patrons, we're all in, at the table to try to figure that out. Any nuanced questions? We're happy to answer them. Not as well as Julia, but I'll try my best.
Do we have a time frame on when we think things are
Uh,
expiring?
I think they voted it out of the revenue committee this afternoon at 1. That's when the details became known. I do believe it'll be on the floor tomorrow for them to start talking about it. So I don't know what that means exactly at this moment as far as the timeline. It's a very, very fluid situation. So whatever that report was, by tomorrow, it's going to be non-existent.
Any other questions? All right, that brings us to our unfinished business for this evening, which is to review the progress on our summer maintenance and transportation purchases.
Okay. We are generally done with the majority of our projects over the course of the summer. I'll just start at the top of the list and work through all of them and then answer questions as we go through here. The Bennington Elementary Playground drainage, we have completed. Wood chips got here this last week. We were able to get the bus loop road open here, and we've had some significant rains without any water in our facility. Knock on wood here. So we believe that the drainage system that we put in place, that we put in as far as improvements, has done what we had hoped it would do. And so we'll continue to monitor that as well. The Pine Creek Playground is the one area that we're still a little behind on due to just the equipment being delayed and being delivered. And so I had a meeting last week with the playground company. They're going to pour the cement for the Gaga pit at Pine Creek here in the next week or so. We'll be able to put in one of the smaller pieces of equipment on the current playground, but the other pieces that are coming won't be here until mid-October, so we'll look to put those or install those in at that time. We are in joint partnership with the PTO as far as the cost on that. The district bus we purchased quite a while ago and has been here and is ready to go this week. The high school roof repair, when we wrote this report, roughly about 65% completed. Looking in the next 18 to 20 days to be done up on the roof at the high school. They assured us and we're comfortable with the fact that that's not going to disrupt school in any way as far as noise or anything going on. The back lot is still a little congested, and Mr. Laverty, or Dr. Laverty's worked with his staff to make sure that they're aware that as far as parking and coming in and out of that fine arts area is still off limits until they get done here in a couple of weeks. So we feel comfortable with that as well. The concrete repair at Heritage and at Bennington Middle School, that MCTOM program that we went through with that fibercrete, we have felt comfortable with. It was quite a bit less as far as cost. And so we're going to keep our eye on that, on how that holds up over the course of the winter. And into next year, we hope that that is a solution that isn't quite as expensive, where we're able to fix those joints that just break out over time in our
How does it look?
It's not.
Different.
It's different, yeah. I think it actually looks better than if you were to cut out strips on the panels and put those in, because it's such a distinct color change when you put that new cement in, where this kind of blends in. You don't really notice it until you look for it, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, that's different.
Yeah.
But again, if you want to see what it looks like 2 or 3 years after it's been installed, if you go to Come and Go on 168th and Maple, it's on their joints at all the Come and Goes across the city. Well, I've been doing this for a couple of years. That's where we got the idea and started to look into it last spring as far as that product. So we've been pleased with it. We are going to monitor as the year goes on to see how it holds up as we get through winters with buses and cars consistently driving over it over and over again. And then Dr. Claus talked to you about the modular units that Mr. Eads and I had an opportunity to go look at with public schools. Questions with our summer projects or purchases that I can answer, or Mr. Eads did a great job this summer coordinating through that. I really appreciate all his help getting bids and getting all that coordinated and helping manage it. So he's available also if you have questions.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to our new business this evening, which is the discussion of our 23-24 budget. coming to a close,
Yeah,
fiscal year, so happy to have an update.
We're getting close. So our fiscal year, as a reminder, ends at the end of August on the 31st. And so we're starting to get down to the very end on what this could look like for us. When we zoom out on our expenses and we look at our 23-24 expenses, we're anticipating payroll to be about $40,190,657, which is about 77.8% of our total expenditures this year. And so about 78% of what we spend is on people and benefits. The accounts payable, which is everything else from buying curriculum to keeping the lights on, is going to be $11,419,730, which is about 22% of our total expenditures. So all in this year, our total expenditures, we're planning on $51,610,387. Obviously, that's not going to be perfect, but it should be fairly close. At the beginning of the year, we anticipated that we were going to spend $51,615,000. So we are right on budget with what we anticipated and what we communicated at the beginning of the year, just slightly underneath. Within there, we do have a minimum of $250,000 of depreciation fund transfers as well anticipated. That would go towards replacing transportation technology, textbooks, maintenance, and furniture as well. So those show up as expenses this year that we can then turn around and utilize through our reserves in the future years. And it might be more than that, but as of now, that's where we have planned on that line item. Revenues for this year, kind of a reminder between our local, which would be our property taxes and our other local receipts that we get, and then our state, which would be both equalization aid and our special education. Those account for 97% of our budget. And so almost everything comes between the local and the state. Both are coming in right at $26,300,000, give or take. Our total revenues for this year, as you can see up there, are $54,212,000. And so our revenues are significantly higher than our expenses. We knew this when we came into the year because we were preparing for next year when once we get there, our revenues are going to decrease from this year. And so trying to do it over a 3-year period as opposed to zeroing in on 1 year. And so we do anticipate a cash reserve addition of about $2.6 million this year. That will move us from about a 21% reserve to just over a 25% reserve for the upcoming year. And so that's something that we can continue to look at in the future years, but we do have a solid reserve moving up. Some interesting information that, or stats, I suppose, that come out of this year's budget. It's a 7.92% increase over previous years, which would be the lowest increase in about 10 years. Obviously, it's growing like a weed and adding buildings and all the things that come with it. So it will be the lowest expense increase that we've had in almost 10 years. Our payroll was 11.4% of that. Obviously, as we added staff for this year, our accounts payable decreased 7%. And, you know, when you look at an overall staff budget, what is not mandated or is not personnel, you have about a 4% variance. It's about 4 to 5%. And so decreasing 7% from last year to this year is pretty solid in our accounts payable, and we'll anticipate that will go down even further next year. Revenues increased 11.32%. What's incredible is our revenue went up 11%, and that was the least that went up in 5 years. Again, just the incredible growth that we see throughout the district. Next year, that's going to go down. It'll be a decrease in revenue, not an increase of any kind. We should end the year in our cash reserves around 25%. We are well positioned for 24-25. We're going to have a tough financial year. We've been talking about it for 365 days, and it's almost here. We realize that next year is going to be, we're going to see a total revenue drop of about 4%. We're going to lose $5.4 million in state aid. All of those things that we anticipated, but we are well positioned for 24-25 because of the decisions that were made here in 23-24. So feeling good as we can moving into next year's budget. Questions?
Thank you for that recap. The next item is for us to review our enrollment projections for the school year.
First one, please. So we're gonna start with our actual enrollment chart. This is my favorite one to look at, for whatever that's worth. Because it just has a little bit of history of where we were at. Okay, so this is K-12, no preschool is included in there, and so kind of keep that in mind. You can see the percent of student growth over the years. We've got 5 years there prior to this year. Last year, we had 4,160 students on October 1st. As of today, we're anticipating 4,307. And so we're going to grow 147 students, or 3.5% for next year. Which, again, most districts, they grew 150 kids, they would be like, holy buckets, what are we doing here? That's bigger than some districts within the state of Nebraska. For us, it was actually a lower year. It was, as to be expected over the last couple of years, we're having a little bit less on student growth as the housing market has continued to change. But how did those 150 kids come in? The first number that's on the right in blue, and that's our cohort survival. And so the way that our cohort survival, or what that number means, is we had X number of kindergartners. How many became first graders? So if you had 100 kindergartners, and you have 105 first graders, you added 5, your survival rate was 5%. If you have 100 kindergartners, the next year you have 90, you have a negative 10% survival rate. And so how many new kids got added in within that first through 12th grade? And that was 70 kids, or about 1.82% of our total growth. What has changed a little bit for Bennington is actually our entry-exit. Entry, the number of kids in kindergarten coming in; exit, the number of seniors going out. And so last year we had a graduating class of 264. This year's kindergarten class is 341. And so our entry exit was 77. If you look backwards to 1920, the entry exit was 179. So as our senior classes are starting to grow and get a little bit bigger, our entry of our kindergartners have kind of flatlined in the last 6 years. We've been between 320 and 345. And so we haven't had like a huge bump within our kindergarten class, at least over the last 6 years. You add the 77 and the 70, and you get 147 new kids within the district this year. The good part is we're well positioned to handle the kindergarten classes, where I think there were times in Bennington's history that those kindergarten classes come in and there are 50 more than we anticipate, and we're trying to make it work. Being on year 6, between 320 and 345, we're well positioned to handle the kindergarten class. It's really that growth that's moving through the system that is a little bit more of a struggle for us, mostly at the high school level right now. Questions on that?
Third grade's a big class.
Yeah, you get these outlier classes, and the really hard part of those outlier classes, maybe there are 50 more than the class above them. Well, we need 2 or 3 more teachers in that grade, and then the next year we don't need 2 or 3 teachers in that grade. And so our staff is so flexible, and it's so great to work with about bouncing around, taking a different grade or a different assignment the upcoming year. But it does create its own little challenges as well. The second chart we have up there is our individual building enrollments. So we kind of see what each of our buildings within the district have for enrollment this year. We'll start with a little bit of the outlier for the year, and that is Anchor Point. Anchor Point is 418 K through 5 students. That doesn't include the 75 preschool students, just K through 5. Last year they had 356. So they went up almost 60 kids within Anchor Point. Bennington Elementary went down 3, Heritage went down 20, Pine Creek went up 9, Stratford went up 11 or 12, Anchor Point almost 70. And so just the unique dynamic within that attendance boundary right now, that they've seen almost all the growth within Anchor Point. So that's something we're continuing to think about and work through with Mr. Boyes and the staff, because that's just a little bit different. As far as the other elementaries, like I said, they're all fairly close to last year, give or take, within 10 to 12 students. Bennington Middle School has grown by 7 students. Bennington South has grown by 13 students. The high school has grown by 55. And so I think last year during the bond campaign, we said with the no growth, or what our anticipated within the high school, was going to be 1,088, and we're slightly above that. And so we're almost directly on with what our projections were at the high school, because you don't see huge number changes 9 through 12. Kids will change, they'll move into the district, or they'll change buildings, K through really 6, a little bit in 7th and 8th. By ninth grade, you get some kids that want to go into a high school, or maybe some want a smaller experience or larger experience, or whatever that is. You don't get tons of movement 9 through 12, and so it's just the students that are filtering out that we've seen in the elementaries and middle schools over the year. So it's almost exactly as anticipated. With that, the last chart we have there for you is our capacity chart within our school district. And so this shows where our elementary, middle, and high school enrollments are compared to our building capacities. And so if you go back to 21-22 and fall of 21-22, you'll see we have 2,000 elementary students. We're at 99% capacity. We had 849 middle school students. We had 113% capacity. The following year, in 2022-23, we opened Bennington South Middle School and Stratford. And so it immediately reduced those down. And the green on the chart is we're good. The yellow is like, we got to start figuring out what to do because we're at 90 to 95% capacity. The red is well over 95%. You know, let's have further discussions on this. And so you can see in 22-23, we were all green. Moving forward, this year we have one red, and that's the high school that's at 96% capacity. The elementaries are at 86. They're in pretty good shape right now. The middle schools are in really good shape because Bennington South was so large and will grow into that over the years. So we should be set up in the middle school for quite a few years to come. This is using the 5-year cohort survival. And so I think we have talked about this several times. We take those cohort numbers, kindergarten to first grade. What was that percentage over the last 3 years? We'll average it together. That's how we'll project. Then we have a 5-year, and we put it together. And then 8-year. That's something that we have to continue to have conversations about. Which one of these metrics do we feel like is most important, or the correct one to use, I should say. Last year, we identified the 3-year because, housing rates are still high. We're not seeing quite the growth that we have in the future. Us to project on the years when we were growing 10 or 11% students that would not have been appropriate. And so we wanted to make sure that we were the most conservative of the estimates. And I think that still probably holds true moving into next year. The question is, what does the future look like? If all of a sudden, interest rates on mortgages drop a percentage, tomorrow, we might want to look at using a 5-year analysis. So we might want to be looking at some historical data. We might not want to be quite as conservative as we have, obviously, when we're in the environment that we are. And so that's a conversation I think we've got to keep having to figure out which one of those is the most appropriate. So this is the 5-year analysis. It's not the most conservative. It's not the most aggressive. It's somewhere in the middle. But I just wanted to make sure you knew which one I was using. So it actually doesn't vary too far from the 3-year at this point. It's a little bit, shows a little bit more than a 3-year, but not a whole lot. So, questions on that? Obviously, the glaring one on there is the high school. You go to 28, 29, and you're at 126% capacity with 1,450 kids. That's no different than what we have seen in previous charts as well, but it's the only one that's got that big red line there for us to be thinking about. Questions on that?
Thank you.
All right, the next item before us is for us to discuss, consider, and take action to approve the contract for our nighttime cleaning services.
Yeah, Dr. Bloomkamp and I are going to ham and egg this. Basically, if you guys have any questions, you ask him. Long story short, we did an RFP for our nighttime custodial services. Those are performed between 4 and 12:30 a.m. Monday through Friday at every building within the district. I think it's been we have worked with RTG within the past as well, put out a 3-year bid, and did receive 6 responses to those. 5 of them are what we're going to call a complete bid. We asked for certain specs to go through there. Only 5 of the 6 had all of the specs and all of the information in it as well. Of those 6 bids, the top one, again, was RTG with an after-hours rate of $25 per hour and an annual cost of $960,000, which was about $65,000 less than the second closest qualifying bid. As a measurement, our previous contract with RTG that expires tomorrow, the after-hours rate was $28, so this one's $3 less. The annual cost was $979,000, and so this one's about $20,000 less per year as well. And that's for a variety of things. I think there were some, in the previous contract, there was some equipment in there as well that they had to get purchased in order to get the correct equipment at the buildings. Well, now that equipment is here, and so, we're seeing a reduction with that as well within our cost. All in is a 1.96% decrease in our nighttime services if it were to be approved by RTG. And now any hard questions go to that.
And we have discussed this in Building and Finance Committee, and we've been happy with the services for our
Very much
teachers,
so.
so.
We've had a great relationship, a great contractual relationship with them.
I have no questions.
Yeah, I probably should have said that. We did talk about this with Building and Finance, and Building and Finance was unanimously recommending approval of it.
So this is pretty big though if we don't approve this because tomorrow.
We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. It was better than what we originally thought.
Wait a second. Can't start back in the year.
We're gonna be buying some Roombas. Figure it out.
All right, I move to approve the 3-year contract between Bennington Public Schools and RTG Building Services, Inc. as presented for nighttime contracted cleaning services.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Is there any further discussion or questions? All right, Jody, call the roll.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Allison.
Yes. Motion passes.
I do want to thank Dr. Camp, Mr. Neiman's, because, putting it together an RFP on a 3-year deal for a cleaning contract that was really specific is a lot of work. So I appreciate all they did to have a really meticulous process, and I think is a good result as well for us.
All right, thank you. This brings us to the dates and times of our next regular meeting, which is September 9th, which is our budget hearing at 6 p.m. here in the district office, followed by our regular board meeting. And we will have a special meeting on August 26th, and this is going to be pretty short. It's at 5 o'clock. It's just to clear our bills for the fiscal year. So just to make sure folks are aware of that. And we will be needing to schedule a meeting for budget adoption in the coming weeks, so.
Yeah, sometime in that, probably the week is September 23rd. So I'll try to get something out and we'll get that on the books.
And Building and Finance is meeting after this, and otherwise I think that's it for the important dates.
We may be reaching out pretty quick with the NASB area membership meetings. Those are September 24th and September 25th if you want to attend. They just said Omaha, they didn't give a specific location. It's been in Papillion in the past. Or if that doesn't work, Fremont's on September 25th. So we'll reach out and see if you guys want to register for that.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jeremy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Jody, call the roll.
Tim?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Motion passes, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. For anybody that needs their seat signed,